Hey there, Adrienne Elise here. Welcome to the Gaia Daily for October 28th through 31st, 2022. Well, here we are in the very strange time between eclipses. We had our partial solar eclipse at 2 degrees exactly, Scorpio, and this week on Tuesday. And wow. So it takes about 3 days or so to come out of the new moon energies, and solar eclipses are new moons. And this time we had the sun and the moon and Venus together. And what's the energy of the sun and Venus together is about, and they're still close and they're going to stay close through mid November. So, very powerful time because the sun is about who we think we are, and Venus is our feminine. So, it's like a rewriting. This eclipse season is about a rewriting of the feminine identity, reprogramming. And with Jupiter retrograding back into Pisces and Mars turning retrograde, it's really pulling us into those old stories so we can clean them up for good of the past because the sun and Venus, and now Mercury will be moving into Scorpio this weekend. So the sun, first Venus, then the sun, then Mercury will be making a conjunction with the south node of the moon. And so that will be leading up to the next eclipse, which is a total lunar eclipse. And that happens at 16 degrees Scorpio, Taurus. And that is on November 8th, election day in the US. So, with the combination of this astrological events, it's always like this in astrology. It's just like everything we do in our world has been cut up into pieces, and we think that we can somehow come to some understanding. And it's like, no, we're a whole. And so, when you're looking at the astrological energies, you can't take one event in itself in the timing. You've got to look at all of the other playing factors, and that's part of the deal with the astrological events. If you followed astrology, it's been like an increase, a steady increase in the astrological events of main big events, these squares, oppositions, and sometimes helpful trines. So it's a really intense energy. And the sun, first Venus will come up to the south node on next week on the 3rd. And that's Thursday. Then the sun the sun will come up to the south node on Sunday the 6th, and then Monday the 7th, Mercury. So we've got um, Mercury and the sun coming closer together. And that will happen on 11/9, November 9th, the day after that total lunar eclipse. So the South Node in Scorpio, we have not had a lot of activation of this energy. It's just like Scorpio, it's just been kind of laying in wait over there, paying very close attention, but not really playing a role or an outward role. Now that the Sun and Venus and Mercury, boom, 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 lining up and talking to the South Node of the moon, we've got to pay attention. Now, the south node, the nodes of the moon is where the sun, the orbit of the sun and the moon intersect. And so it speaks to the direction that we're heading collectively and in our birth chart individually for our incarnation. So the north node is in Taurus, and that total lunar eclipse happens at 16 degrees Taurus, right there in the middle. Now the nodes move backwards, but it's still saying, like, hey, we're halfway through. Are you getting the message? And so the north node in Taurus, and the north node is like, how are we going to get to where we're going? It's about the future and our direction and our path. And then the south node is what's holding us back from the past, karmic ties, contracts, energies of distortions, and mysteries hidden in our psyche. So, of course, in Scorpio, Scorpio is all about the mysteries. And so it's just bringing this time of year is always a time of going inward and into our shadow so that we can find our inner light. But this particular year, it's really intense. So it's important for supernova souls. It's like you've to kind of be aware of this feeling that's coming up with Venus and the sun together for that eclipse. 2 degrees exact, Scorpio, 0 minutes. Now, 2 degrees exact is speaking about, hey, it's time to come back together and work together. Separate, we're nothing, together, we're everything. And it's like, yes, it's this deep. So Scorpio is in touch with the deeper passions and yearning for a more true existence, something palpable and with depth. And so 2 degrees is like right at the very beginning of Scorpio. And that at the beginning and the end of the signs, there's like a bloom of the energy. It's like an excitement. So it's like, oh, and so it's like this deep and profound longing that you probably put aside and compensated and ignored and have been running from this for so long. And it's you missing your people, not having one person to talk to about what really matters. And, then, we just kind of get through our life, and so it's really powerful because this eclipse that happened on Tuesday was like, "Time to come together, you guys, we gotta figure this out," and then it just had the effect of bringing up everything that's keeping us from coming together. Because supernova souls, we came here to come back together with God, with source, with consciousness. I mean, we all did, but we know we're getting close. And so there's an energy around coming back into healing our wound of separation, coming back into direct connection with source before we can really join together in the way that we dream of. And so the sun and Venus together in this placement for this eclipse is like, oh, because eclipses are about what's been hidden and revealed, things being hidden and revealed. It's about timelines and things kind of lining up into place. And so it's this kind of like you can't deny that you have this deep longing for connection. And maybe it's that longing and desire and being so separated from your people from so long for so long that's actually going to bring you back to source right before you join together with source, like coming back home. We're all looking for this home, and it's like, this place is rather hostile for supernova souls, even though we love it so much and we love humanity so much. But we are just before you release your ego construct back into source, and we'll kind of a lot of times you'll go back and forth with this for quite a while, giving yourself permission, overcoming your fear, letting go. This is where we're at. We're kind of at the edge where there's no return, and it's that really strange feeling. But right before you connect back with source, it's like the deepest emptiness you can imagine. So we're going there because and you're also tapping into collective energies of supernova souls as sensitive souls who are aware on other levels, carrying a huge burden right now. At least you're starting to become aware of the burden you've been carrying throughout this whole evolution because you know things other people don't know. And it's like you're carrying a psychic burden of the truth, the pain of those truths, and it's just all coming up. And we've got the pain of our own truth, because what's ultimately keeping us from supernova souls know themselves as God and source. And yet, why can't we just get back there? And it has to do with a lot of what the season is about, too, especially with the sun and Venus together in Scorpio. It's like shame, program shame around the feminine, our healing side. It's like everything that has made, the Piscean age made the healing and the help and the support the evil and the devil. And, that's coming out of the Piscean age. It's like we're steeped in the deepest duality that we can really get to, which means we must be just about to shift into a whole new level. So just keep that in mind if you find yourself in this deeply isolated, disconnected place. Um, that it's about clearing out the shame of whether or not you deserve to be here and be supported and be connected to source and be who you are. Take your power back. And we've been, like I said, it feels like supernova souls have been running from this feeling and denying it for so long. And this eclipse was just like, whoa. you know, this deep grief coming up over this delusion of separation, but also like that separation from your soul tribe you came in with as a pod. And then feeling like that it's just almost the quarantine we've been in, psychic quarantine with the electromagnetic frequencies and our matrix reality. It just we come up against this impossible. And like the world wants to, and the people around you often will be like, oh, you're just crazy. You're just a dreamer. You're just a stargazer. It's like, come back to earth. And they whittle away at your dreams. Now, we've been holding on to this dream of perfect union and perfect love and our utopia. We know who we are and what we're doing here. And we have been holding on by a thread to this dream. And that makes us we never fit in here, you know? And all of this is coming up so intensely because with Jupiter teetering on the edge, Jupiter at 0 degrees Aries, which is a point of excitement and newness and new beginnings, um, but just about to go back into Pisces. And with this Scorpio energy, it's just like, whoa, deep overhaul of a lot of intense experiences that you never were able to process from your past lives. This has been playing out. Have you kind of seen these patterns over the last couple of years? We just had like a mini rehash of the whole Piscean age, which happens at the end degrees and the beginning degrees of the sign, because the ages move backwards. So, from Pisces to Aquarius. Um, and so it's a feeling of, what we've experienced over this last couple of years for most of us was like really reliving these stories that we thought were just made up, but where in a moment, the people you love and trust the most could turn on you and make you the illness, the sickness, the disease, you know? And this has happened to us. We played this role because we came in as a light and that brings up the shadow and then the projections of people um and what the way that control was maintained in the Piscean age was using the group think, the collective consciousness, right? So it's like that mob mentality in order to control humanity. So we were often on that wrong side of that story or the right side, we're finding it's all what's wrong, what's right. We have no idea anymore. We do. We know that there is a right world and it's not here, but it is here in our hearts. And we're claiming that back. So, this journey into the darkness, into this strange feeling, into this, ugh, it's like so important to set ourselves free so that we can stop having to look back, you know, um, again and again and get on with the show, right? Like, let's do it. So, but we can tell from the astrology that the next couple of months is not a time to move forward in the outside worlds. It's inward journey with Mars retrograde and Jupiter back in Pisces. It's like, and Scorpio season and eclipses, all of it. So we're on a deep inner journey. And we got these messages about the Mars retrograde being a remembering, a reinitiation for the supernova soul, a deep journey into the mysteries of you so you can start living and breathing that dream. And so it's when you know about the astrology, it can be so helpful instead of beating yourself against the wall for not being able to move forward or figure your shit out. I mean, we have Mars square Neptune for 2 whole months, all the way to the end of November. Because Mars turns retrograde at 25 degrees. That happens on the 31st on Halloween. And so Neptune's at 23 degrees Pisces and Mars is in Gemini. So Mars came as coming, slowing down to take this retrograde, made that square with this month, made a square in October with Neptune. And then in November, after it turns retrograde, it will make another square with Neptune. Now, very important to note that the third and final square with Neptune happens when Mercury or Mars comes out of retrograde shadow. And that won't be until March 2023. And that one, all planets will be direct there for a little minute, and it'll be quite a revival energy there, that spring equinox. So, um, but Mars turns retrograde 25 degrees, will retrograde back to 8 degrees, and in January 2023 turns direct at 8 degrees. And then, so it's very powerful. Mars is our main action planet. It's our let's get up and go. It's in Gemini. It's about expression and movement. It's about the voice and movement, our way forward. That movement forward is through our expression. And wow, has that been suppressed for far too long? you know so all of this is compounding, and when Mars turns direct, there will be a outpouring of expression, and we want to be ready for that. We want to really move with those energies. And so take this time to go within, go face those deepest, darkest places, that place where you feel utterly and completely alone, and tell and remind yourself that there's no way that can be true. You have already identified yourself as source. You're an advanced soul. You've already had all these experiences. But we've been so manipulated and tricked into this deep and profound isolation. And they'd really like control energies would like all of humanity to just stay there in fear and immobilization, except for like, we've gone through hell and back. So get the F out of our way. It's like, and that's the empowerment that's coming for supernova souls through this inward journey of like not being in denial of that strength and power within you, that feeling, that the power of your desire and longing to come back together with your people, come back together with God, to come back together to our utopia, this perfect love. Now, the reason this concept is coming up is because Mercury, Mercury moves into Scorpio on um, the 30th. So Jupiter moves back into Pisces on the 29th, tomorrow, Saturday, and then Mercury moves into Scorpio on the 30th. So big shift of energy that's been like we're already feeling creeped out. This is really going to take us into this, right? Because it's like, okay, now we got Sun, Venus, Mercury all in Scorpio, and Jupiter back in Pisces. Now, so but Mercury right now is at the very end degrees of Libra. Now, Mercury took a retrograde in Libra. And since the Mars is turning retrograde and all this weird stuff is going on, we haven't really felt the resolution of the Mars retrograde. And maybe that's part of excuse me, Mercury. Maybe that's part of Mercury moving back into moving into Scorpio. And that has an energy of a resolution to the Mercury retrograde, because Mercury, now get this, we talked about Mars retrograding back to 8 degrees of Gemini. Now, this is interesting because Jupiter is in retrograde in Aries, made it this triumphant move over that Aries point last spring, made it to 8 degrees Aries, and then turned retrograde. And also the Mercury retrograde in Libra started at 8 degrees. And then Mars is retrograding back to 8 degrees. So 8 is a number of transformation, and it's a number of taking your power to the next level. And so that really fits. And maybe that can help us understand the energies of this time. It's like Phoenix rebirth, just like step into the fires of those powerful emotions and come back to allow it to help you come back to that center source. And it's like this massive purification and ego death. And I know we've been going through this, but this is an intense culmination moment for this. So we need to explore this 8 degree energy. But back to the Mercury retrograde, Mercury started, went Virgo into Libra, retrograded back into Virgo, and then back into Libra. And so that early degrees of Libra for that retrograde cycle are about this perfect idyllic love, just like the end degrees of Libra. It's the utopian love. It's a perfect balance. It speaks to what we really all want inside, like what we really all need, the way we used to be able to live on the earth. little short times and very, and little moments when we could come together. When we came together in these moments, it was so beautiful and we planted seeds. Now it's time to come into these seeds and to sprout these seeds. And but we got to prepare, right? We got to go into the darkness. We got to incubate. We got to come back into the power of who of what and who we are. Now, that whole dynamic of the dark Piscean age and people turning against you, and all of a sudden everyone that you love and trust is ready to hunt you down and burn you at the stake. This is actually representative of a quintessential issue for supernova souls, and it's like a deep programmed fear of our own power and potential. It's the only thing that's kept us from our power and potential, and the whole matrix reality cannot survive if we're in our power and potential. But if we have an energy in our field that might be deep subconscious, but a fear, a programmed fear of our own power, then we project that. And then after what happened in the Piscean age, it's like an imprint. And so we've been working through this where when you come in as the healing light and people react to you as if you're the problem. This is an issue with true healing. True healing is the body's finding its own way back to cure, and there's a process to that. Like in homeopathy, you can have symptoms come up from the past. It's called return of old symptoms because if in any true healing, you're going to unwind the pattern. In Western medicine, it's just about suppressing, and keeping it all just twisted and distorted and stuck inside and sick and wrong. And so when you bring healing, it brings movement of energy. And then symptoms and energies come up, like that thing of you bringing up the shadow and people around you simply because you've been doing your spiritual work. And then they're just like scared of letting go. You're lighting up all their ego constructs and their issues, and they're scared as shit to let go of that. And they're going to project all of their blackness back onto you. And this is just who we are, team scapegoat, right? So, a lot of what we're dealing with in this deep dark dive is finding that programmed fear of our own power and cleaning up where we've been projecting that out into the world. So, we have this purified, and maybe that was a thing of going back into Virgo with a Mercury retrograde. It's like a purification, there's like, we cannot, because those end degrees of Virgo are about purification, and we cannot come into that perfect love until we clean all this up. And it's collective garbage, and we've taken it on, and DNA garbage and distortions. But oh my gosh, you've already come so far too. This is part of this time. It's like, oh, on the one hand, going into the depths of the darkness that you've been avoiding for lifetimes, but then also seeing how far you've come and how strong you are, and just like claiming it, and like, let's get on with it. So come January. Okay, so Jupiter turns direct on the 24th. So happy Thanksgiving in the US on November 24th. And so that's going to be a shift of energy, but Jupiter doesn't move back into Aries. And that's a really powerful moment. Prepare for this moment. It's like we have an opportunity to just land and anchor and embody the Christ consciousness energy we've been talking about and looking at and thinking of and, toying with. And it's like, so because when Jupiter goes over that Aries point, 0 degrees Aries for the third and final time in this cycle on December 21st, 2022, very powerful moment. Now, this is a marker. This is like the timeline you've been flirting with. You've had glimpses, like, it's like this weird time we've been in where where it's like, oh, the heaviness of this world and the collective energies and all this stuff we've been carrying for humanity are just so overwhelming, but then glimpses of that perfect love and perfect world. And then it's right around the corner. We can do it, and we get to do it for real this time and really anchor it in. So Christ consciousness timeline, because that 0 degrees Aries point is where the greater conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter happened in at the time of the birth of Jesus. So that was the last shift of ages. That was the beginning of the Christ consciousness availability and an etheric um, energy around in our world. And now the second coming of Christ is actually our embodiment of this energy. Like he said, you can do what I can do and more. He was showing us light body and transfiguration of and detaching from our attachment to the physical, literally turning our body into light and being able to exist with or without a body, you know? And I don't know the way the world looks sometimes on the brink of nuclear war, which if, who knows if that's even real, but we have no idea what's really going on. But there's definitely a whole bunch of Armageddon stuff out there. And isn't it peaceful to know that you came here to transcend all that? And that you have the power within you to create your own environment of exactly everything you need as a spiritual being. And you've already done this. And just sit in that and to sit in that you are equipped and fully prepared for this experience, no matter what happens. And that's you coming into your power. You can't fear it when you're up against the wall and you gotta use it, So here we are. And so with Jupiter going over that Aries point on December 21st, it's a very powerful moment where we can choose and anchor this timeline and start to embody and live this truth of the advanced who we really are. And we don't even know who we are, right? That's been part of the trauma of the process. And but this is all about incarnating, landing home, that bigger self. This is one of the first messages I got when these downloads started to happen back in 2015 around supernova souls. It was like, there's a big part of you, you have no idea, and it's coming in. It couldn't land when you were born. It couldn't incarnate fully because of the energies on the earth at the time, because of birth practices, because of karmic relationships with your family and parents, a myriad of reasons, our fear of who we are. Um, and now we're incarnating. We're literally being reborn as who we really are in our bigger self. And when that first came through, it was like, oh, that's interesting. But I didn't, really know what that meant. And still we're figuring it out together. So um then Jupiter will go on to come out of retrograde shadow in February 2023. Mars turns direct January 12th. Then Jupiter comes out of retrograde shadow, and then Mars will come out of retrograde shadow at that Ides of March, third and final square with Neptune, the end of the delusions. No more duping us. We see all the way through all of the stories and the lies that have kept us playing small. And so, very powerful energy this spring. Really good time to finally move forward on what you've been working on. Gosh, it looks like maybe about 5 years, 5 year cycle. And you were just starting to think about how it would look like in the launch before this whole nightmare happened, with our health situation. And so, that's very exciting. And then if you can take this time to prepare instead of finding yourself beating yourself up for what you haven't been able to accomplish, right? Because you've been living in survival mode and they've been trying to chase you down for lifetimes. Like give yourself a break and yet also give yourself the peace of the presence. You know, everything that's ultimately controlling humanity right now has to do with keeping us in the past or the future and worry and fear. So when you find yourself there, I don't know, you're a supernova soul. You gotta come back to center and be in that place of where that vision we've been holding on to by strings and being like, wait a minute, there's one string left and it's attached to this big, beautiful, hot air balloon of possibilities. And we're just pulling that in as we clean out whatever might be in the way. But coming back to how we've been feeling this week with this eclipse, it's like, oh yeah, it's like in admitting how much we have this deep desire and yearning to come back together with our people. It's like bringing up everything that's keeping us from feeling worthy and all of the deep shame and programming, and it's just like stepping into that dungeon of the Piscean age because you left a part of your soul there. And so that we can get on with this story, right? And get on with the show. So incredibly powerful time. Hang in there. You are we're so close to massive shifts that we could beyond what we can imagine. I know we've been saying this, but I can feel it and see it. Can't you feel it in your own being? And remember that we're alone because we agreed to be, and we're trying to keep ourselves and each other safe. Um, but we're also alone because we need to come back into wholeness before we can really have those relationships, these soulmate empowered, magical relationships of people coming together and we're um, planting, watering and harvest, beginning to grow the seeds that we planted over this whole evolution. We've been working on the same dream through this whole thing, and it feels like it's dark, scary, darkest night, but we're closer than we've ever been. And so, hang in there and be present, and know that there's a ton of collective energies we're all feeling. We're also invited into this deep delusion of separation so it can be healed. And um, so we're all being kind of squeezed into like a portal. Eclipse seasons are kind of like that, and it really culminates this time with that total lunar eclipse at 16 degrees Taurus, because the energy of the total lunar eclipse is about whether or not we deserve and feel worthy of our own abundance. And then we uncover all of that hidden shame and programming, fear of our own power, and all this. There's a bunch of religious, the Piscean age was so like this father god stuff, and you got to do it right, and you got to perform, you got to like, um, do accomplish something so that you have God's love, prove yourself worthy, um, and so this is coming up a lot, even though we don't subscribe to that in, our waking day, but the subconscious kind of, um, just a poking energy of like, are you doing enough? Are you working hard enough? Are you pleasing? And maybe that's coming also from people around you where you never saw the dynamic of the demands that they were making on you. And you always felt like, of course, you want to serve, you want to help, you want to, but then recognizing that there's something kind of off. Now, this is huge. It's funny because it's the first thing I was going to talk about. So maybe we're coming to the end because this is our upside down in between, inside out place that we're at. But Mercury is an exact square to Pluto today. And Mercury, now Venus and the Sun also made the square to Pluto at the end degrees of Libra. We're talking about that perfect love, that ideal love, and why we can't attain or grab a hold of it. And now, the vision of this, I began to talk about, which is how we used to live on the earth, which was in perfect balance. And um, specifically, spiritual communities of supernova souls throughout time always had this attainment. They were looking for this perfect balance on every level between masculine and feminine, on every level of society. And so, what that looks like is, having basically a perfect balance and leadership of masculine and feminine, and an energy of holding the whole community with that mother and father love, and that unique or utopian ideal. And of course it does seem utopian and impossible, after the family life that most of us experience. And, yet this is what this Libra activation has been about, is like activating that dream again, and of this perfect love. And then it's interesting, then the progression is into the Scorpio, the yearning and desire and what needs to happen to, actually manifest that truth rather than just dream about it. So, Mercury at the end degrees of Libra in square to Pluto is after that retrograde, being like, how do we grab a hold of this string? How do we hold on to the dream and allow ourselves to lift back up into joy in our true birthright of what it means to be alive and be at peace and harmony and love? And but we've given our freedom up again and again, our sovereignty for peace, to try to keep the peace, you know? And that's the issue there with Libra. And so the square with Pluto is like tension around where we have compromised our ideals in order to go along, keep ourselves safe, or go along with the program. Literally, where we've made contractual arrangements, where we've agreed that the group, the family, the organization, the country, the tribe is more important than our personal spiritual growth. And that can't hold right now. And so this is bringing up everywhere where we've had outside loyalties or given access to outside energies, giving access to our power to outside energies. And maybe that's part of why we can't really come back in our powers, because if you're just going to leak it away, and you're not going to let yourself come back in your power, because this is endowed by source as our birthright, our direct connection. When are we going to honor and have gratitude and love for and treat accordingly this precious gift we've developed over lifetimes? But also it's like God and source manifest, and we're just running away from it, pretending it doesn't exist, leaking it out to the people around us. And we must hold sacred this energy. And maybe that's part of this Taurus activation, to become worthy of our gifts, of our spiritual gifts, and to claim them back. We must honor them and contain them and hold them sacred and treat them as source. Source did not intend us to um, give it away like that. It's for us to use and direct. And so powerful rewriting of our whole psychic programming around access to our own power, whether or not we have permission for it, whether we're good enough, whether we can handle it, and ultimately whether we deserve it. We're moving into a golden age, and it's like what's really hanging up humanity is like whether or not we can receive on that level, because we've all been so programmed with low self-worth and shame over just existing, especially supernova souls, because you exist in the light, and you still do. You might have been hiding it. You might have been so deep down in the experience of the gutters of this world, just all sullied up trying to hide that light, but it's still there. Can't get rid of it. It's been your whole problem all along. And isn't it time to celebrate and claim? It's a lot of this Jupiter moving back into Aries, but first it hasn't gone to Pisces yet, right? So we're in this strange time of like Jupiter poised at 0 degrees, and that new creation and new start and the spark of life. And like I'm claiming back my power, but then wah, back into the dungeons of the Piscean age, of those end degrees of Pisces, and everything that has kept you from fully owning that light and power. So, wow, intense and powerful times. I hope you can consider joining us for a soul group session, a group intuitive session for supernova souls for this total lunar eclipse. That the lunar eclipse is on Tuesday, November 8th, election day, but the soul group session will be on Monday, the 7th at noon Mountain Time. So look out for that. The information to sign up is in the information box below. Let's stay together energetically. What incredibly powerful times. We're so close. Just stick with it. Keep breathing, keep loving, and we got this. And so let's get on with the show. So I look forward to seeing you soon on the next update. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.